The shuttle broke through the thick gray clouds, and Ambassador Velthar pressed his face closer to the viewing window. Below him stretched a sight that made his three hearts sink with pity. New Sol megacity sprawled across the flooded coastline like a wounded creature refusing to die. Massive towers of steel and concrete rose from dark waters, connected by thousands of bridges and walkways. Smoke and fog mixed together in the air, making everything look dirty and tired. Velthar checked his scanner again, hoping the readings were wrong. They were not. The air contained toxins that would kill most species within hours. The radiation levels were 3 times higher than safety standards allowed. The population density showed over 10 million humans crammed into structures that his people would condemn as unsafe. This was not a city. This was a disaster zone that somehow still had people living in it. The Quillarian diplomat had seen many worlds during his 40 years of service. He had visited mining colonies, frontier settlements, and recovering war zones. But nothing prepared him for this. Earth had applied to join the Galactic Council, and Velthar had volunteered for the survey mission, curious about the species that had recently discovered faster-than-light travel. He expected to find a young civilization, perhaps struggling but hopeful. Instead, he found this nightmare. The shuttle landed on a designated platform near the city center. Through the window, Velthar could see the landing pad was cracked and stained. Rust covered the metal railings. A thin layer of dark soot covered everything. He activated his environmental shield, a bubble of clean air and controlled temperature that surrounded his body. The shield flickered to life with a soft hum, and only then did he feel safe enough to exit the shuttle. The platform connected to a larger building that might have been beautiful once. Now its walls showed water damage and crude repairs. Someone had painted the entrance doors recently, a bright blue that stood out against the gray surroundings. Velthar found that small touch of color somehow sad, like putting flowers on a grave. A human waited for him at the entrance. The man looked to be in his middle years, with dark hair touched by gray at the temples. He wore simple clothes that had been repaired many times. His face showed deep lines around his eyes and mouth, the kind that came from stress and hard living, but his expression was calm, even friendly. "Ambassador Velthar," the man said, bowing slightly. "Welcome to New Sol. I am Minho, City Administrator for Sector 7. I will be your guide during your stay." Velthar returned the bow, a gesture he had learned from studying human customs. "Thank you for meeting me. I must ask, is the evacuation plan ready? How many shuttles do you need?" Minho blinked, clearly confused. "Evacuation? I do not understand." "The evacuation," Velthar repeated, gesturing at the city around them. "Surely you do not intend to keep people living in these conditions. The Galactic Council can provide temporary housing on several nearby stations while we find suitable relocation planets. The process usually takes a few months, but we can begin immediately." For a long moment, Minho just stared at him. Then, to Velthar's surprise, the human smiled. Not a bitter smile, not a desperate one. A genuine smile of confusion. "Ambassador, this is our home. Why would we evacuate?" Velthar felt his translator must be malfunctioning. "Your home is contaminated. The air quality alone is better than it was 20 years ago," Minho finished. "We have been working on it. Would you like to see the city? I can show you around." The Quillarian wanted to argue, but he stopped himself. Perhaps the humans truly did not understand how bad their situation was. Perhaps they had lived in these conditions for so long they had nothing to compare it to. He would need to document everything carefully for his report. The Galactic Council would need to see the full extent of this tragedy. They left the landing building and entered the city proper. Velthar's environmental shield flickered as it worked to filter the air around him. Minho walked beside him without any protection at all. The human wore a simple respirator mask hanging around his neck, but he did not use it. He breathed the toxic air as if it were normal. "You should activate your breathing protection," Velthar said urgently. Minho touched the mask at his neck. "This? I only need this in the lower levels or during smog alerts. Up here, the air is fine." Fine. The human called this air fine. Velthar's scanner showed contamination levels that would require full hazmat suits in any civilized world. But Minho walked and breathed without concern. Either humans were incredibly resilient, or they had adapted to accept poisoning as normal. Neither option was comforting. They walked through crowded streets where thousands of humans went about their daily business. Street vendors sold food from small carts. Children ran between adults, laughing and playing. Workers carried tools and materials, rushing to various jobs. Everyone moved with purpose, as if this were a normal, functioning city. But Velthar saw the truth beneath the surface. The buildings leaned at angles that suggested structural damage. The pavement was cracked and patched with different materials. The walls showed water stains and rust. Every surface looked tired and old. And the people, when he looked closely, showed signs of hard living. Their clothes were clean but worn. Their faces carried the lines of constant stress. Even the children looked tougher than they should, their eyes older than their years. A group of workers passed by, carrying metal beams on their shoulders. They wore no safety equipment except for simple gloves. One of them nodded at Minho, who nodded back. Velthar noticed the workers' arms and hands showed old scars and burns, injuries from dangerous work with inadequate protection. "The structural integrity of these buildings," Velthar began carefully. "Have they been inspected recently?" "Every month," Minho replied. "We have volunteer engineering teams that check the critical infrastructure. It is community work. Everyone contributes." Volunteer teams, not professional engineers with proper equipment, but volunteers. Velthar added this to his mental report. The humans were so desperate, they relied on untrained civilians to maintain their collapsing city. This was worse than he thought. They reached a plaza where a large crowd had gathered. Velthar tensed, expecting some kind of riot or protest. Instead, he found a market. Vendors displayed their goods while shoppers browsed and bargained. The noise was loud but cheerful. People called out greetings to each other. Someone was playing music on an instrument that looked homemade. Minho led him to a small food stall where a woman was serving bowls of soup to a long line of customers. She looked up as they approached, and her tired face brightened with a smile. "Minho, you brought a friend." She looked at Velthar with open curiosity. "Is this the alien ambassador? Welcome. Would you like to try some soup? It is vegetable and protein. Very good." Velthar checked his scanner discreetly. The food showed adequate nutrition but was made entirely from synthetic ingredients and recycled water. Still, it appeared safe enough for human consumption. The woman served it with such pride and warmth that he felt guilty for scanning it at all. "I do not eat solid food," he explained gently, "but thank you for the offer." The woman nodded, unbothered, and turned back to her customers. Minho bought 2 bowls, handing one to a young boy who had been watching the stall hopefully. The boy's face lit up with joy as if he had received a great gift, not a bowl of cheap synthetic soup. As they walked away, Velthar found himself deeply troubled. These people were not screaming for help. They were not demanding rescue. They were living their lives as if everything were normal, as if this toxic, crumbling, overcrowded disaster zone were an acceptable place to raise families and build futures. He looked at Minho, who was drinking his soup while walking, seemingly content. The human caught his look and smiled again. "What do you think of our city so far?" Velthar struggled to find diplomatic words. Finally, he settled on honesty. "I do not understand how anyone can live here." Minho's smile did not fade. If anything, it grew warmer. Well, Ambassador, you are here for a month. By the end of your stay, maybe you will understand. Velthar seriously doubted that. But he had a job to do. He would document everything. He would show the Galactic Council the terrible conditions these humans endured. And then, whether they wanted it or not, humanity would receive the help it desperately needed. He just had to make them see the truth about their situation. 3 days into his visit, Velthar was more confused than ever. Minho took him through different parts of the city each day, showing him what the human called normal life. But nothing about it seemed normal to the Quilarian ambassador. Everything he saw reinforced his belief that these people were living through a slow-motion catastrophe. Yet somehow they did not realize it. On this morning they walked through the residential districts. The housing blocks stretched upward like fingers reaching for cleaner air that did not exist. Each building held thousands of people in spaces that made Velthar's skin crawl. His scanner showed apartments no bigger than his shuttle's cargo bay, yet families of 4 or 5 lived in them. Some spaces were even smaller, barely large enough for a sleeping platform and a small washing area. Minho led him into one of these buildings. The elevator was broken, so they climbed stairs that showed decades of wear. The walls had been painted many times, layers of different colors showing through where the latest coat had chipped. On the 5th floor, Minho stopped and knocked on a door. A young girl opened it, maybe 10 years old. Her face lit up when she saw Minho. "Uncle Minho!" She turned and yelled into the apartment. "Jinwoo! Uncle Minho is here with the alien!" A boy appeared, slightly older than the girl. He stared at Velthar with huge eyes, taking in every detail of his appearance. Velthar was used to this reaction. His people were tall and thin, with smooth blue-gray skin and large eyes. To humans, he probably looked very strange. "Yuna Jinwoo, say hello to Ambassador Velthar," Minho said. "He is visiting from the Quilarian Confederacy." Both children bowed politely. Yuna spoke first, her voice excited. "Is it true you can see in the dark? Minho told us your people have special eyes." "That is correct," Velthar replied, charmed despite himself. "My species evolved on a world with very little light, so we developed enhanced vision." "That is so cool!" Jinwoo exclaimed. "Can you see through walls?" "No, nothing that dramatic. Where are your parents?" "Working," Yuna said easily. "Mom does night shift at the water plant, so she is sleeping now. Dad is on the engineering crews. They will be back tonight." Velthar felt a chill. These children were alone in this cramped, unsafe building. "Who watches you during the day?" The children looked at each other, confused by the question. Jinwoo answered. "We watch ourselves. We are old enough. And Mrs. Hana's stall is just downstairs if we need anything." "Mrs. Hana is the food vendor," Minho explained, seeing Velthar's expression. "She keeps an eye on several families' children. The whole block does. We look out for each other." This was worse than Velthar thought. Not only did humans live in terrible conditions, but they left their young unprotected while both parents worked. He tried to keep the judgment from his voice. "What do you do all day?" "School in the morning," Yuna said. "Then homework. Then we help clean the building corridors. Everyone takes turns. Then we play." "Would you like to see our game?" Jinwoo asked, already moving to the window. "We race through the walkways. I am faster, but Yuna knows better shortcuts." Velthar looked out the window Jinwoo pointed to. His environmental shield flickered with alarm. Outside, a network of bridges and walkways connected the buildings, suspended over the dark floodwaters far below. Some were official structures, metal and concrete. Others looked homemade, built from salvaged materials and desperation, and children played on them. "That is not safe," he said firmly. Yuna laughed. "We have been doing it for years. Everyone does. You just have to know which boards are weak." See that red mark on that walkway? That means do not step there. They had a system for marking unsafe areas because the areas were unsafe to begin with. Velthar felt sick. These children navigated deadly drops and unstable structures as part of their daily play. And they smiled while talking about it. Minho said goodbye to the children, and they continued their tour. As they descended the stairs, Velthar could not hold back anymore. Those children are in danger every moment. The bridges could collapse, they could fall, they could be hurt or killed. They could, Minho agreed calmly. Life has risks, but they are careful. We teach them to be careful, and they have each other. That is not enough. It has been enough so far. They emerged onto the street level where the morning market was in full activity. This was where Velthar had met the soup vendor on his first day. Now he saw the same woman, Hana, setting up her small stall. She worked efficiently, arranging her supplies and heating her cooking surface. She noticed them and waved cheerfully. "Good morning, Minho. Good morning, Ambassador. Beautiful day, is it not?" Velthar looked up at the gray sky, perpetually covered in smog and clouds. Beautiful was not a word he would use, but Hana seemed genuine in her cheerfulness. She hummed while she worked, occasionally calling out greetings to passing neighbors. "Mrs. Hana," Velthar said, approaching her stall, "may I ask you some questions?" "Of course. I love talking. What do you want to know?" "How long have you lived in this city?" "All my life, 43 years now. I was born 2 levels down, before the flooding got worse. My family moved up here when I was a teenager." "And you, do you wish to leave?" Hana paused in her work, considering the question seriously. "Leave? To go where?" "Anywhere. To a world with clean air and safe buildings? To a place where you do not have to struggle every day?" She smiled at him, the kind of smile an adult gives a child who has said something sweet but naive. "This is my home, Ambassador. My friends are here. My customers are here. I know every family in this district. Where would I go where I have that? But the conditions are what they are," she finished. "Look, I will not lie and say life is easy. It is not. But it is my life. I built this business from nothing. I know every regular customer's favorite soup. I watched Yuna and Jinwoo grow up. When Mr. Taiyang's wife died, I brought him meals every day for 2 months. When my stall burned down 3 years ago, the whole neighborhood helped me rebuild it. This place has meaning because we give it meaning." Velthar did not know what to say to that. Fortunately, customers began arriving, and Hana turned her attention to them. He watched her work, serving bowls of synthetic soup with genuine care. She knew everyone by name. She asked about their families, their work, their problems, and they talked to her with real affection. Minho led him further into the market district. Here, hundreds of small vendors sold everything from food to clothes to tools. The goods were mostly cheap, mostly used or repaired, but people shopped with energy. They bargained and joked with the vendors. They met friends and stopped to chat. They treated this rusted, crowded, toxic market like it was a normal place to spend a morning. They passed through a section where the floodwater was visible below, dark and certainly contaminated. A group of workers labored on a bridge that connected 2 buildings. They wore minimal protection, just gloves and basic masks. One of them was welding, bright sparks falling into the water far below. No safety harness, no backup team. Just workers doing a dangerous job because it needed to be done. "Does the city government pay them?" Velthar asked. "The government has no money for repairs," Minho said. "These are volunteers. They take turns. Everyone with engineering skills contributes some hours each month. We maintain what we can." Volunteers, risking their lives for no payment. Velthar had documented this in his notes, but seeing it made it worse somehow. These people had so internalized their desperate situation that they volunteered for deadly work. They reached a small plaza where children played while adults watched from benches. Velthar recognized Yuna and Jinwoo among them. The children ran and laughed, playing a game with a worn ball. Normal childhood play, except it happened on cracked pavement beside toxic water, under a poisoned sky, surrounded by buildings that could collapse at any moment. An elderly man sat on one of the benches, and Minho led Velthar over to him. The old man looked up with cloudy eyes but a sharp smile. "Taiyang, this is Ambassador Velthar. Ambassador, this is Mr. Taiyang. He has lived in this district longer than anyone." 84 years, Taiyang said proudly. "Born 3 levels down before the water came. I remember when you could see the ground." "You remember when this city was better?" Velthar asked, interested. "Better? Different, maybe. We had different problems then. Now we have these problems. Tomorrow we will have new problems. That is life." The old man watched the playing children with a fond expression. "But we are still here, still living, still making the best of things. Do you not want more for those children? A better world? Of course I do. That is why we work so hard. Every generation makes things a little better. When I was young, the air was worse. The water was worse. We had less food, less medicine. It has gotten better, slowly. My children will see it better still, and their children even more. But that could take centuries." "Yes," Taeyang agreed simply. "So?" Velthar sat down on the bench, his environmental shield adjusting. He watched the children play. He watched the vendors work. He watched the volunteers repair the bridge. He watched all these humans living their impossible lives with determination and even joy. "I do not understand," he admitted quietly. Taeyang patted his arm, the old hand gentle even through the shield. "You are not supposed to understand yet. You have only been here 3 days. Give it time." But Velthar was not sure time would help. Everything he saw confirmed his initial assessment. This city was a disaster. These people needed help, whether they realized it or not. He just had to find a way to make them see it. Minho invited Velthar to a community meeting in Sector 7. The ambassador accepted, curious about how humans organize themselves in such harsh conditions. He expected chaos, maybe desperation. What he found was something completely different. The meeting took place in a converted warehouse, a massive space that might have stored goods once. Now it served as a community center. The roof leaked in 3 places, and buckets caught the steady drip of water. The walls showed rust and water damage, but someone had painted murals on them, bright colors showing scenes of the city and its people. Children's artwork hung on boards along one wall, chairs were arranged in a large circle, mismatched furniture that had clearly been salvaged from many sources. As Velthar and Minho entered, people were already gathering. They came in 1s and 2s, greeting each other warmly. There must have been 50 people present, maybe more. Young and old, wearing work clothes stained from their daily jobs. They all looked tired, but they smiled when they saw friends. Several stopped to stare at Velthar with curiosity, but most just nodded politely and found seats. A woman in her 30s stood at the center of the circle. She had short, dark hair and moved with confident energy despite the tiredness in her eyes. She noticed Minho and walked over, her face breaking into a genuine smile. "Minho, good to see you. And you must be Ambassador Velthar. I am Suji, community organizer for this district. Welcome to our monthly meeting." "Thank you for allowing me to observe," Velthar said. "Observe? No. Everyone who comes participates. That is our rule." Suji gestured to the circle of chairs. "Please sit. We are about to start." They found seats, and Suji moved back to the center. She did not raise her voice or demand attention. She simply waited, and gradually the conversations died down. Everyone turned to face her. "Thank you all for coming," Suji began. "We have a lot to discuss tonight. First item, the water purification system in Building 7. Yoonji, do you want to give us an update?" A young woman stood up. She looked to be in her mid-20s with oil stains on her work clothes and calluses on her hands. "The main filter is failing. I can patch it, but it needs replacement soon. The problem is cost. A new filter from the official suppliers costs more than our quarterly budget." Murmurs of concern rippled through the group. Suji nodded. "Options? I can build one," Yoonji said. "I have been studying the design. It will not be as good as the manufactured version, but it will work. I need help gathering materials and about 2 weeks to construct it." "Who can help?" Suji asked the group. Hands went up immediately. 6 people volunteered on the spot. Yoonji wrote down their names, already organizing the work teams in her head. Velthar watched in amazement. They were planning to build critical infrastructure equipment from scratch with volunteers because they could not afford to buy it properly. The meeting continued. Item by item, the community discussed their problems and found solutions. The daycare needed more volunteers. 4 people signed up. The elderly residents in Building 3 needed help climbing stairs since the elevator was broken. A rotation schedule was created. The roof repairs on Building 9 required materials. Someone knew where to find salvaged metal. Another person had tools to share. Velthar noticed something strange. No one was paid for any of this work. No one even suggested payment. People volunteered their time, their skills, their resources, simply because the community needed it. This made no economic sense according to everything he knew about civilization. During a break, Velthar approached Suji. "This is all volunteer work?" "Of course. We are all in this together. When someone needs help, we help. When I needed help last year after I got sick, the community brought me food and covered my work shifts. Now I am healthy, so I organize and contribute. That is how it works. But in Quilarian society, such labor would be compensated. There would be contracts, agreements, payment schedules." Suji looked at him with patient eyes. "We do not have enough money for that. So we found another way. We take care of each other because we are neighbors, because we are friends, because when everything else falls apart, we still have each other." The meeting resumed. Taeyang, the elderly man Velthar had met before, stood to speak. "I want to talk about the memory project. Some of you know I have been collecting old photographs and stories from before the flooding. I think we should create a history wall so the young people know where we came from." This started an animated discussion. Where should the wall go? Who would help construct it? What stories should be included? The energy in the room was remarkable. These people, living in poverty and danger, wanted to spend their limited time and resources on a history project. Not for profit, not for survival, just for meaning. Yoonji spoke up again. "Mr. Taeyang, if we are doing this, I want to add a vision section. Not just where we came from, but where we are going. I want to display the improvement projects, show people how each year we make things better." "We could do both," Suji suggested. "Past and future together. Show the journey." The idea was approved by consensus. Volunteers signed up. Velthar realized he was witnessing something his people had lost long ago. The Quilarians had perfect cities, controlled environments, efficient systems, but they had lost this sense of collective purpose. When was the last time his people gathered to solve problems together? When was the last time they volunteered for something that did not benefit them directly? During another break, Velthar approached Yoonji. "You are an engineer. Studied it when I could. Taught myself the rest. Could not afford formal education, but I read everything I could find. I work on the city maintenance crews during the day. At night I study and work on projects. Like building water filters? Like that, yes. Also working on better air filtration systems, more efficient solar collectors, improved food synthesis. None of it is as good as what you can buy from off-world, I am sure. But it is what we can do with what we have. Why not leave? With your skills, you could get work on any galactic station. You could have a better life. Yunji's expression turned serious. This is my home. These are my people. Yes, I could leave and have an easier life. But then who would build the water filter? Who would teach the next generation of engineers? Who would make things better here? She shook her head. Running away does not solve problems. It just leaves them for someone else. The meeting moved to its final topic, the upcoming Children's Festival. Despite everything, the community was planning a celebration. They discussed games, food, decorations. Everyone contributed ideas with genuine enthusiasm. They were planning to create joy and celebration in the middle of their struggle. We do this every 3 months, Minho explained to Velthar. The children need happiness. We all do. So we make it. Where do you find the resources? We save a little from each family. We make the decorations ourselves. The food is simple, but we make it special. It is not about expensive things. It is about being together. After the meeting ended, people lingered to talk. Velthar observed them closely. They discussed their work, their families, their problems. But they also laughed. They shared jokes and stories. They made plans to help each other with various tasks. This was not the behavior of a desperate, dying community. This was something else entirely. Suji approached him as people began to leave. What did you think, Ambassador? I am confused, he admitted honestly. In Quilarian society, such conditions would lead to competition for resources. People would fight over what little there is, but you cooperate instead. You share. You help each other. I do not understand how this works. It works because it has to work, Suji said simply. We tried the other way, long ago. Fighting over resources, everyone for themselves. Know what happened? People died. More people than necessary. So we learned. We changed. We decided that survival was not enough. We wanted to actually live. And you cannot really live alone. But the cost to you personally, there is no cost. There is only benefit. When I help my neighbor fix his roof, I know he will help me when I need it. When I teach a young person engineering, I know they will teach the next generation. When I contribute to the community contributes to me. Not in money, but in ways that matter more. Safety, friendship, purpose, hope. Taeyang joined them, moving slowly with his age. She is right, Ambassador. I have lived through times when people competed and fought. I have lived through times when we cooperated. Cooperation is harder in some ways. It requires trust, patience, work, but it is the only way that actually works for everyone. What if someone refuses to help? What if they only take and never give? It happens sometimes, Suji admitted. We talk to them. We explain. Usually they come around when they understand how it works. If they do not, well, the community remembers. But mostly people want to belong. They want to be part of something, so they contribute. Velthar walked back to his temporary quarters that night, his mind spinning. He had come to Earth expecting to document a failing civilization. Instead, he was finding something he could not quite define. A community that should not exist according to all his training and experience. A social structure that violated basic economic principles yet somehow functioned. His people had everything they needed, provided by efficient systems. They worked their assigned jobs, received their compensation, and lived comfortable lives in perfect cities. But when had he last felt the warmth he saw in that drafty warehouse? When had he last been part of something larger than himself? He looked back at the building where the meeting had been held. Lights still glowed in some windows. People working late on community projects, probably. Volunteering their time because they cared, not because they were paid. Maybe, Velthar thought he was starting to understand. Just a little. These humans had built something precious in the middle of their disaster. Not wealth, not comfort, but connection, purpose, meaning. And maybe that was worth more than clean air and safe buildings. Maybe. The alarm started at dawn, a harsh, mechanical wailing that echoed through the entire district. Velthar jerked awake in his quarters, his environmental shield flickering in alarm as it detected sudden changes in air pressure and structural vibrations. His first thought was an attack. His second thought was an earthquake. Then he heard Minho pounding on his door. "Ambassador, we have a structural emergency. I need your help." Velthar opened the door to find Minho already dressed in work gear, his face serious but not panicked. "What is happening?" "Building 12. Main water pipeline burst. 3 levels flooding, risk of total structural failure. We need everyone who can help." Minho was already moving, not waiting to see if Velthar would follow. The ambassador grabbed his recording equipment and ran after him. This was it. This was the disaster he had been expecting since he arrived. The city's failing infrastructure had finally reached its breaking point. Now he would document the chaos, the panic, the breakdown of order that happened when systems failed completely. They emerged onto the street into organized chaos. People ran in different directions, but not randomly. They moved with purpose. Some carried tools, others carried children. Velthar could see the problem now. Building 12 leaned at a dangerous angle, water pouring from its lower levels like a waterfall. The dark, contaminated floodwater mixed with the cleaner water from the broken pipes, creating a toxic flow that threatened nearby buildings. Velthar expected screaming, shoving, desperate crowds trying to escape. Instead, he saw coordination. Adults moved children toward designated safe zones. Work crews ran toward the problem, not away from it. Someone had set up a command center in the plaza, and people checked in there before heading to their assigned positions. Suji stood at the command center, directing people with calm efficiency. She had a damaged digital board showing a schematic of the building and surrounding structures. "Teams 3 and 4 shore up buildings 10 and 11. If 12 falls, we cannot let it take others with it. Team 7, shut down all water mains in the area. Team 9, emergency evacuation. Make sure everyone is out." Yunji ran up, her work bag already on her shoulder. "I am here. Where do you need me?" "Main pipe access, level 5. The burst is there. Can we stop it?" "I will know when I see it." Yunji turned and ran toward the building without hesitation, without safety equipment, without backup, running toward danger because it needed to be done. Minho was already organizing a team of workers. He saw Velthar and waved him over. "Ambassador, can your shield create a clean work environment?" "Yes. It filters air and water within a certain radius." "We need to work in contaminated water. Your shield could help. Will you come?" Velthar hesitated for only a second. This was not his city, not his problem. But Minho looked at him with complete trust, as if the question of whether he would help had never been in doubt. "Show me where." They waded into the building through knee-deep water. The structure groaned around them, stressed beyond its limits. Velthar's scanner screamed warnings about structural failure, toxic contamination, dangerous radiation from damaged old reactors somewhere below. He activated his environmental shield to maximum, creating a bubble of clean air and filtered water around them. The work crew moved into his shield gratefully, able to breathe easily and see clearly without the contaminated water burning their eyes. They worked with practiced efficiency, not wasting movements or time. Someone handed out tools from waterproof bags. Someone else set up emergency lighting. Within minutes, they had organized into an effective team. "The main support beam is cracked here," one worker called out, pointing to a massive pillar. "If it goes, the whole level collapses." "Can we brace it?" Minho asked. If we had materials and time. Then we get materials and time. Minho pulled out a radio, calling to Suji at the command center. We need structural supports, level 5, building 12. What do we have? Suji's voice crackled back. Salvage from the construction project in Sector 9. I am sending it now. 10 minutes later, a crew arrived carrying metal beams and welding equipment. They worked in shifts because Velthar's shield could only protect a limited number of people at once. One team braced the support beam while another team worked on stopping the water flow. A third team evacuated the remaining residents, carrying the elderly and injured through the flooded corridors. Velthar found himself helping move debris, using his greater-than-human strength to shift heavy objects. A young boy, maybe Jinwoo's age, directed him where to place emergency supports. The child's face was serious and focused, showing no fear despite the building groaning around them. A little to the left, the boy instructed. There, perfect. Now we need one more over there. He took orders from a child, and the child knew what he was talking about. These humans trained their young ones for disasters because disasters were normal here. On level 5, Yunji worked on the main pipe with 2 assistants. The water sprayed with enough force to knock a person down, but they had rigged a temporary shield from metal plates. Yunji welded in the cramped space behind it, her hands steady despite the danger. Sparks flew, mixing with the water in a spectacular and terrifying display. "Almost got it," she called out. "Just need to seal this section, then we can shut off the flow." "How long?" Minho asked. 10 minutes, maybe 15. The building might not have 15 minutes. Then I better work fast. She did not ask for more help. She did not complain about the danger. She just worked, focused completely on the task. Velthar watched her through his shield. This young woman who had taught herself engineering, now stopping a flood that could kill hundreds. She made it look almost easy. The building shuddered, a deep groan that everyone felt in their bones. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling. The workers paused, looking up, waiting to see if this was the end. Then the shuddering stopped, and everyone went back to work. Not because they were foolish, but because there was no point in panicking. Either the building would hold or it would not. All they could do was their best. Velthar realized he was not afraid. He should be. His scanners showed the building was moments from catastrophic failure. But surrounded by these humans and their calm determination, fear seemed pointless. If they could face this without panic, so could he. "Done!" Yunji shouted. "Shutting off the main flow now!" The waterfall of water slowed to a stream, then to a trickle, then stopped. The sudden silence was startling. Everyone held their breath, waiting. The building groaned one more time, then settled. The immediate danger had passed. Cheers erupted throughout the building. People hugged each other, exhausted but triumphant. Minho clapped Yunji on the shoulder. "Good work! Amazing work!" She grinned, face covered in soot and water. "We are not done yet. Still have to pump out the water and check for secondary damage, and the residents will need temporary housing until we can certify the building safe." "Already being arranged." Suji's voice came over the radio. "Community housing opening up. Families are taking in neighbors. Food service setting up in the plaza. Medical team checking everyone who was in the building." They emerged from Building 12 into morning light. Velthar was exhausted in a way he had never experienced. His shield had been running at maximum for hours, draining his energy reserves. His body ached from physical labor he was not used to. But around him, the humans kept working. Crews pumped water from the building. Engineers checked structural integrity. Volunteers distributed food and water. Medical teams treated minor injuries. The community center had been converted into temporary housing, families doubling up to make room for those displaced by the flood. And Hana had her food stall set up in the plaza, serving hot soup to everyone who passed by. "On the house today," she announced cheerfully. "Everyone worked hard. Everyone eats." Velthar accepted a bowl gratefully and sat on a bench. His environmental shield was down, too drained to maintain it. For the first time since arriving on Earth, he breathed the city's air without protection. It tasted of smoke and chemicals and 100 other contaminants. But he was too tired to care. Minho sat beside him, equally exhausted. They did not speak for several minutes, just recovering. Finally, Minho broke the silence. "Thank you for helping. Your shield made the work possible. I did very little. You did enough. That is all anyone can ask." Velthar watched the continued recovery efforts. How many people died? None. Some injuries, but nothing serious. None. Velthar could not believe it. That building was seconds from complete collapse. The flooding, the contaminated water, the structural failure. How did no one die? Because we know what to do. We have drills, we have plans, we have practiced this. Minho took a sip of his soup. This is not the first emergency, Ambassador. It will not be the last. We learn from each one. We get better. In my report, I was going to write that your city is one disaster away from complete failure. We are always one disaster away from failure. That is why we work so hard to prevent failure. Minho smiled tiredly. Did you see panic today? Did you see chaos? No. I saw organization, coordination, people helping people. That is who we are. That is how we survive. Across the plaza, Yuna and Jinwoo ran past, carrying supplies to the medical station. They were not scared. They were helping. Even the children understood their role in keeping the community alive. Yunji walked by, covered in grime but smiling. She gave them a thumbs up. Building will be safe in a week. I promise. Suji appeared, looking at her damaged board. Okay, we have temporary housing for everyone. Food service will run all day. Clean water distribution set up. Repair crews scheduled in shifts, so no one works more than 6 hours. Medical following up with everyone. I think we got this under control. You think? Minho asked with a slight smile. We definitely got this under control, Suji corrected herself, grinning. Velthar looked at his recording equipment. He had documented everything, the disaster, the response, the coordination, but his initial assumption had been completely wrong. He had come expecting to record failure. Instead, he had recorded something remarkable, a community that faced catastrophe and simply dealt with it, not because they had the best equipment or unlimited resources, but because they had each other, because they had practiced, because they refused to give up. The building that should have killed dozens had killed no one. The flood that should have destroyed a district had been stopped. The crisis that should have proven his point had proven the opposite. These humans knew how to survive. More than that, they knew how to survive together. And that, Velthar realized, was more powerful than any technology. After the flood crisis, Velthar spent 3 days in his quarters reviewing his recordings and notes. Something fundamental had shifted in his understanding, and he needed to figure out what it meant. The humans had faced a disaster that should have killed people, destroyed infrastructure, and caused social breakdown. Instead, they had organized, cooperated, and solved the problem with minimal losses. This was not what his training had prepared him for. The Colarian Diplomatic Academy taught clear principles. Civilizations required certain minimum conditions to function. Clean air, safe water, secure housing, adequate resources. When these conditions failed, society broke down. It was a universal law, proven across hundreds of worlds. Except here, it was not true. These humans lived in conditions far below minimum standards, yet their society not only functioned, it showed remarkable cohesion and resilience. How? He needed more information. Minho had given him access to the city's historical database, and now Velthar dove into it with desperate curiosity. He needed to understand how New Seoul had reached this point. The records went back 300 years. Velthar started at the beginning. New Seoul had been a beautiful city once. The old photographs showed clean streets, green parks, buildings of glass and steel reflecting blue skies. The population was smaller then, maybe 2 million people. They had prosperity, technology, comfort. It looked like any successful civilization. Then came the climate collapse of the 22nd century. The records showed it happening in terrible detail. Rising temperatures, melting ice caps, rising seas. The old coastal cities flooded. Hundreds of millions of people needed new homes. Resources grew scarce as farming regions turned to desert. Water became precious. Air quality declined as old industries released decades of stored pollution. The governments of Earth tried to manage it. They built walls against the sea. They created atmospheric processors. They developed new technologies. But there were too many people and not enough resources. Economies collapsed. Wars broke out over water, food, habitable land. Velthar read the casualty numbers with growing horror. Billions died in the crisis years, not from single disasters, but from the slow grinding failure of systems that could not support so many people under such harsh conditions. New Seoul survived because of a choice. When the seas rose and the old city flooded, the people faced a decision. They could leave, try to find space in the overcrowded inland regions, or they could stay and adapt. They chose to stay. The records showed the early years of adaptation. They built upward, constructing new levels on top of old buildings. They created vertical farms to grow food in limited space. They developed water purification systems that could clean contaminated floodwater. They learned to maintain aging infrastructure with limited resources. They created social systems to share what little they had. It was not planned by any government. It was organic, growing from necessity. Neighbor helping neighbor. Communities organizing themselves. People sharing skills and resources because the alternative was death. And slowly, generation by generation, it worked. The population stabilized, the systems improved, the air got slightly cleaner, the buildings got slightly more secure. Not because anyone solved the problems completely, but because thousands of people made small improvements every day. Velthar found himself reading personal accounts from those early years. A woman who described learning to farm on a rooftop, sharing her harvest with her building. A man who taught himself engineering to repair water pumps, then taught others. A community organizer who created the first mutual aid network, the ancestor of what Suji ran now. One quote struck him particularly hard. An old man being interviewed 70 years ago asked why he stayed in the flooded city when he could have left. "This is my home. My family is buried here, even if their graves are underwater now. My friends are here. We built something together in the worst times. I would rather live in a hard place with people I love than an easy place with strangers." Velthar sat back, processing this. The humans had not ended up in New Seoul by accident or ignorance. They had chosen it. They had chosen community over comfort. They had chosen meaning over ease. He needed to talk to someone. He found Taeyang in the plaza, sitting on his usual bench and watching the afternoon activity. The old man welcomed him with a smile. "Ambassador, you have been hiding. Are you well?" "I have been studying your history," Velthar said, sitting beside him, trying to understand. "Ah, heavy reading, I imagine. Your people went through terrible times. The climate collapse, the wars, the death. I read the numbers. It was horrific." "It was," Taeyang agreed quietly. "My grandfather lived through the worst of it. He told me stories when I was young. Not the kind of stories you tell to make children feel safe, but the kind you tell so they understand what survival really costs." "Why did people stay in this city? Why not leave when it flooded?" Taeyang was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Where would we go? The whole world was suffering. Every place had problems. At least here we knew the territory. We knew each other. We had history together. When everything else is failing, you hold on to what matters most. But the conditions, we're terrible. Still are terrible by your standards, I am sure. Taeyang smiled sadly. But they are better than they were. My grandfather built with his hands in waist-deep toxic water, no protection except cloth masks. My father improved the water purification, made it safer. I worked on the air filtration systems, made them more efficient. My daughter is an engineer now, working on the next improvements. Each generation makes it better. That could take centuries to reach acceptable standards. Yes. So? Taeyang looked at him with those cloudy but sharp eyes. We have time. Humans are patient when we need to be. We think in generations, not just individual lifetimes. I may never see this city become beautiful again, but my great-grandchildren might. And that is enough reason to keep working. Velthar felt something shift in his understanding. You know this city is harsh. You know you could have easier lives elsewhere. But you choose this. We choose this, Taeyang confirmed, because it is ours. We built it from disaster. Every building, every system, every tradition. No one gave it to us. No one can take it from us. That kind of ownership, that kind of pride, you cannot buy it or receive it as charity. You have to earn it. My people would see this as suffering needlessly. Maybe it is, but it is our choice to make. The old man watched Yuna and Jinwoo race across the plaza, dodging between adults with practiced ease. Those children will inherit a city that works better than the one I inherited. They will make it better still for their children. That is the promise we make to each generation. Not that we will solve everything, but that we will leave things better than we found them. Yunji approached them, carrying a tablet showing complex designs. Mr. Taeyang, Ambassador, I wanted to show you something. She sat on the bench beside them and pulled up her current project. This is an improved atmospheric processor design, based on Quilarian technology that I found in public records, but adapted for our manufacturing capabilities and resource availability. It will clean air 50% better than our current systems, and we can build it with materials we can salvage or synthesize. You reverse-engineered our technology? Velthar asked, impressed despite himself. Studied it, learned from it, adapted it to our needs. That is different from just copying. We need to understand how it works so we can maintain it and improve it ourselves. If we just installed your processors, we would be dependent on you for repairs and replacement. This way, we learn. We grow. But it will take you years to build these. 5 years for the prototype. Another 3 to manufacture enough for the whole district. Another decade to spread it across the city. Yunji smiled. I know it seems slow, but it is faster than the alternative, which is waiting for someone else to save us. And every year in between, people will breathe a little easier because of work we are doing now. Velthar looked at the design on her tablet. It was elegant in its simplicity, adapting advanced concepts to primitive manufacturing. This young woman, self-taught, working with scraps, had understood principles that took his people centuries to develop. And she was using that knowledge not to escape her situation, but to improve it for everyone. Why not leave? He asked her directly. With your skills, any galactic station would hire you. You could have a comfortable life. Clean air, safe buildings, regular food. Why stay here? Yunji looked at him like he had asked why she did not abandon her family. Because this is my home. These are my people. I could have a comfortable life somewhere else, yes, but I would be just another worker doing what I was told. Here, I am building something that matters. Every improvement I make helps thousands of people. Children breathe easier because of my work. That kind of meaning you cannot find in a comfortable job on a space station. You would trade comfort for meaning? Every time, she said firmly. Comfort is nice, but meaning is essential. Humans need purpose. We need to feel like our work matters, like we are part of something bigger than ourselves. This city gives us that. Maybe it is harder than other places. Maybe we struggle more. But we struggle together, and that makes it worthwhile. Minho found them in the plaza as the sun was setting. He looked tired but satisfied. Ambassador, I wanted to update you. Building 12 has been certified safe. People can move back in tomorrow. The repairs will take time, but the structure is sound. How much did the repairs cost? Velthar asked. In money? Almost nothing. We used salvaged materials and volunteer labor. In time and effort? Thousands of hours. But that is how we do things here. In Quilarian society, that building would have been demolished and replaced with a new one. We cannot afford that luxury, Minho said simply. So we maintain and repair. We make do. We get creative. And somehow, it works. They sat together in the plaza as darkness fell. The city lights came on, thousands of them, creating a pattern of human habitation across the vertical landscape. Each light represented a home, a family, people living their lives in conditions that should be impossible. I came here thinking I would document a dying civilization, Velthar admitted. I thought you were victims who needed rescue. I was wrong. We do not need rescue, Minho agreed. We need partnership, trade, knowledge sharing, cultural exchange. We need to be treated as equals, not as charity cases. But you do need help. Everyone needs help sometimes, but there is a difference between help and dependence. We will accept help that makes us stronger, that teaches us, that lets us grow. We will refuse help that makes us dependent, that takes away our agency, that solves our problems for us. Taeyang spoke up from his bench. Ambassador, you come from a people who have solved their problems. You have perfect cities, clean air, all the resources you need. That is admirable. But you have forgotten something important. You have forgotten how to struggle, how to adapt, how to survive when things go wrong. One day, maybe far in the future, your perfect systems will fail. And what will your people do then? The question hung in the air, uncomfortable and challenging. Velthar thought about his homeworld, about the comfortable cities where everything was controlled and regulated. What would his people do if those systems failed? Did they still have the resilience to adapt? Or had they become too dependent on their technology, their comfort, their perfection? We have something you need, Yunji said quietly. Not resources or technology, but knowledge of survival, knowledge of adaptation, knowledge of how to keep going when everything falls apart. That is what humans have learned. That is what we can teach, if you are willing to learn. Velthar looked out at the city, seeing it with new eyes. Not a dystopia, not a tragedy, but a testament to human resilience. A proof that civilization could exist in forms he had never imagined, that meaning and community and purpose could thrive even in harsh conditions. And maybe, just maybe, the humans were right. Maybe his people, with their perfect cities and comfortable lives, had something to learn from this struggling, determined, indomitable community. The thought was humbling, and terrifying, and deeply, uncomfortably true. Velthar spent a week drafting his proposal. He worked late into each night, reviewing galactic aid protocols and resource allocation procedures. If the humans would not ask for help, he would offer it in a way they could not refuse. He would show them what life could be like with proper support. The proposal was comprehensive: advanced atmospheric processors that could clean the air to galactic standards within 6 months, housing modules that could replace the dangerous old buildings, automated food synthesizers, water purification plants, medical equipment, educational systems, everything a struggling civilization needed to lift itself out of poverty. He presented it to the city council in their meeting hall, a repurposed auditorium with worn seats and walls that had been painted many times. The council members sat in a semicircle. 15 people elected from different districts. Minho was there representing Sector 7. Suji sat beside him, taking notes. Other faces Velthar recognized from his time in the city. These were the people who made the decisions. Velthar activated his presentation, holographic displays showing statistics and projections. Honorable council members, thank you for hearing my proposal. As you know, I have spent the past month observing your city. What I have seen concerns me greatly. Your people face daily hardships that could be eliminated with proper galactic support. He pulled up images of Quillarian cities, beautiful and clean. This is what we can offer. The Galactic Council has extensive aid programs for developing civilizations. We can provide technology and resources to transform New Sol within a year. Clean air, safe housing, abundant food, all provided at minimal cost through our aid protocols. The council members watched his presentation with polite attention. No one looked particularly excited, which surprised Velthar. He was offering them paradise, and they seemed merely curious. He continued. The atmospheric processors alone would revolutionize your lives. Within 6 months, your air quality would match galactic standards. Children could play outside without risk. Workers could labor without respirators. Health problems from pollution would decline dramatically. One council member, a woman named Nari, raised her hand. And who would maintain these processors? They are self-maintaining for approximately 50 years. After that, replacement units can be provided through continued aid agreements. So we would depend on you for replacement every 50 years? It is standard practice. Many civilizations operate this way. Nari exchanged glances with other council members. Thank you. Please continue. Velthar presented the housing modules. These can be assembled rapidly, replacing your aging structures with safe, comfortable living spaces. Each module houses a family of 4 with adequate space, climate control, and integrated systems. Minho spoke up. What would happen to our current buildings? They would be demolished. The materials could be recycled. And the people living in them during construction? Temporary housing would be provided during the transition period, approximately 18 months. Suji made a note, her expression thoughtful but unreadable. Velthar pressed on, presenting the automated food systems, the water purification, the medical technology. Everything humanity needed to escape their harsh reality. When he finished, the council sat in silence. Velthar waited, expecting gratitude, maybe tears of relief. Instead, they looked at each other with expressions he could not interpret. Finally, the council chair, an elderly man named Dongyun, spoke. Ambassador Velthar, we appreciate the time and effort you put into this proposal. We would like to discuss it among ourselves. Can you return tomorrow for our response? Of course. I understand you need time to process such comprehensive changes. He left the meeting feeling satisfied. They needed time to overcome their shock, to believe such generosity was real. Tomorrow they would accept, and he could begin the process of actually helping these people. But the next day, when he returned to the council chamber, the atmosphere was different. The council members sat with serious faces, and several had documents prepared. Dongyun gestured for Velthar to sit. Ambassador, we have reviewed your proposal carefully. We appreciate your concern for our welfare. However, we must decline most of what you have offered. Velthar felt like he had been hit. Decline? I do not understand. This would transform your lives for the better. Suji stood, holding her notes. Let me explain our concerns. First, the atmospheric processors. They are wonderful technology, but we would not understand how they work. When they eventually fail or need adjustment, we would be helpless. We would depend entirely on galactic support. That is not acceptable. But you would have 50 years. 50 years is nothing, Minho interjected. We think in generations here. What happens in 100 years? 200? If we lose the knowledge to maintain our own air, we become dependent. And dependent people are not free people. We learned that lesson hard in our history. Another council member, a younger man named Johann, spoke up. The housing modules have the same problem. They are integrated systems we did not design and cannot modify. What if our needs change? What if the technology becomes incompatible with future developments? We would be stuck with buildings we cannot adapt or improve. But they are safe, Velthar protested. Your current buildings kill people. Rarely, Dongyun corrected gently. And usually only when we make mistakes. We have learned to maintain our buildings quite well. Could they be better? Yes, but they are ours. We understand every pipe, every support beam, every system. That knowledge keeps people alive. Nari added, your proposal would also eliminate thousands of jobs. Our maintenance crews, our engineers, our repair specialists. What would they do? Sit idle while your machines do their work? We built our economy around human labor and human ingenuity. Take that away and you take away our purpose. You would have purpose. Velthar was getting frustrated now. You would have time for art, education, leisure. Time to enjoy life instead of constantly struggling. We already have those things, Suji said quietly. We make time for them because they matter to us. And the struggle, as you call it, gives life meaning. When we improve something through our own effort, we take pride in it. When something is just given to us, it feels empty. Velthar stood, unable to sit any longer. I have watched children risk their lives walking on unstable bridges. I have seen people work dangerous jobs with no safety equipment. I have documented health problems from pollution that could be easily prevented. How can you justify refusing help when people are suffering? Minho stood as well, meeting his eyes. Because the suffering you see is not meaningless. We suffer, yes, but we suffer together, and we make it better together. Each improvement we make is a victory. Each problem we solve is proof that we can handle the next one. You want to take that away from us. You want to solve our problems for us. That is not help. That is taking away our agency. People are dying. People die everywhere, Dongyun said sadly. Even in your perfect cities, I imagine. The question is not whether we face hardship. The question is whether we face it as free people or as dependents. Yunji entered the chamber late, still wearing her work clothes. She bowed apologetically. Sorry I am late. I was finishing the prototype for the new air filtration system. She looked at Velthar. I heard about your proposal. I wanted to be here for the decision. We are declining most of it, Suji told her. Good, Yunji said firmly. She turned to Velthar. Ambassador, I have studied your technology. It is incredible, truly. But if you install it for us, we learn nothing. We want to learn. We want to understand. We want to build our own solutions based on your principles, but adapted to our needs and capabilities. That will take decades. Yes. So? There it was again. That phrase that seemed to sum up human philosophy. Yes, it will take a long time. So what? We have time. We are patient. We are persistent. Velthar sat down heavily. I do not understand you people. I am offering you relief from suffering, and you refuse it. Why? Taeyang entered the chamber, moving slowly with his age. May an old man speak? Please, Donghyun said, gesturing for him to approach. Taeyang stood beside Velthar. Ambassador, let me tell you a story. When I was young, we had a similar offer. A corporation wanted to rebuild our district. They would provide everything. All we had to do was sign contracts giving them control of certain resources and decisions. Some people wanted to accept. The offer was generous. The buildings they proposed were beautiful. But my grandfather spoke against it. He said, they want to buy our agency with comfort. They want to make us dependent so they can control us. We refused. The corporation left, and we struggled, but we remained free. I am not trying to control you. No, but you are trying to take away our struggle. And struggle is how we grow, how we learn, how we become stronger. The old man's eyes were kind but firm. Look at your own people. You told me about your perfect cities, your comfortable lives. But tell me honestly, if your systems failed tomorrow, could your people adapt? Could they survive without their technology? Velthar opened his mouth to say yes, then stopped. Could they? The Quilarians had optimized everything, automated everything, perfected everything. They had not faced real hardship in generations. If their systems failed, would they know how to adapt? Or would they simply collapse? We do not want to be like that, Minho said softly. We want to be strong, resilient, capable. We want our children to know how to survive, how to build, how to solve problems. If we accept your help, we lose that. We become soft, dependent, and when something inevitably goes wrong, we will not know how to fix it. Suji pulled out a different document. However, we do not refuse everything. We would like to propose a counteroffer. We will accept educational exchanges. Send us teachers who can explain your technology. Let our engineers study your designs. We will accept trade agreements that let us acquire raw materials we lack. We will accept medical knowledge and techniques, but we want to learn, not to receive. We want partnership, not charity. The council voted. The vote was unanimous. They would accept knowledge, reject dependence. They would take the harder path because it was their path. Velthar felt defeated, but also strangely awed. These humans had more pride than any species he had encountered. They would rather struggle with dignity than accept comfort with strings attached. Even invisible strings, they insisted, might be there. Your counter-proposal is acceptable, he said quietly. I will recommend it to the Galactic Council. But I must tell you, this will be difficult for them to understand. Most species request maximum assistance. Most species, Johann said with a slight smile, are not human. As the meeting ended and people filed out, Yunji approached Velthar. I know you are frustrated, but try to see it from our perspective. If you give a person a fish, they eat for a day. If you teach them to fish, they eat for life. You are trying to give us fish. We are asking you to teach us to fish. But your metaphorical fishing is so much harder than just accepting the fish. Yes, but we catch the fish ourselves. We improve our technique. We teach our children. We adapt when the fish move to different waters. That is survival. That is growth. That is being truly alive. Velthar walked back to his quarters that evening, his mind in turmoil. He had tried to help, genuinely tried, and been refused. The frustration burned in him, but beneath it was something else. Respect. These humans knew what they wanted. They had thought deeply about the consequences of accepting easy solutions. They had chosen their path deliberately. Maybe they were foolish, or maybe they understood something about civilization that his people had forgotten. The value of struggle, the importance of self-reliance, the strength that comes from overcoming hardship rather than avoiding it. He did not know which, but he knew one thing for certain. Humanity would join the Galactic Council on their own terms, or not at all, and somehow that made them more worthy of membership than any species that simply begged for help. The morning of Velthar's departure arrived too quickly. He had spent nearly 2 months in New Sol, far longer than originally planned. His shuttle waited on the same cracked landing pad where he had first arrived, but everything felt different now. The city looked different, or perhaps he was different. He walked through the district one last time with Minho saying his goodbyes. The streets were busy with morning activity. Vendors opened their stalls, workers headed to their jobs. Children ran to school, their laughter echoing between buildings. It all looked the same as that first day, but Velthar saw it with new eyes. The crumbling infrastructure was not neglect, but adaptation. Every patch and repair told a story of people refusing to give up. The crowded spaces were not suffering, but community, people choosing to live close together because connection mattered more than space. The makeshift bridges were not danger, but ingenuity, humans solving problems with whatever materials they had. Hana was setting up her food stall when they passed. She saw them and immediately began preparing something. "Ambassador, you cannot leave without one last meal from me. It is tradition." "You have traditions about aliens leaving?" Velthar asked, amused. "We do now," she said with a bright smile. She handed him a container of soup, sealed for travel. "This will last several days if kept cool. I made it special with extra vegetables. You have gotten too thin since arriving. My species is naturally thin." "Too thin even for your species," she insisted. "You work too hard and forget to eat, so now you have food for your journey." Velthar accepted the container, touched by the gesture. This woman had so little, yet she gave freely. "Thank you, Hana. You have been very kind. You helped during the flood. You are one of us now." She said it so simply, as if belonging to their community was automatic once you proved willing to help. At the community center, Suji was organizing supplies for another project. She stopped when she saw Velthar. "Ambassador, good timing. I wanted to give you something." She handed him a data chip. "This contains all our mutual aid protocols, community organization strategies, and resource sharing systems. You said you wanted to understand how we work. Maybe this will help other worlds that face hardship." "You are sharing your methods?" "Of course. Knowledge should be shared. If our experience can help others survive and build strong communities, why would we keep it secret?" She smiled. "Besides, maybe your people will need these methods someday. The galaxy is unpredictable. Better to have knowledge you do not need than to need knowledge you do not have." In the plaza, Yunji waited with her tablet, practically bouncing with excitement. "Ambassador, before you go, I have to show you the finished prototype. We installed it last night." She led him to a rooftop, where a strange device hummed quietly. It was clearly based on Quillarian atmospheric processing principles, but built from salvaged materials and human ingenuity. Crude compared to galactic standards, but functional and entirely their own design. "It is processing air for a 3-block radius," Yunji explained proudly. "Not as efficiently as your technology, but we understand every part of it. We can repair it, improve it, and teach others to build more. In 10 years, we will have these throughout the city. In 20 years, we will improve the design. In 50 years, maybe we will have something even better than what you offered us." 50 years is a long time." "Yes." "So?" She grinned at him, that now familiar phrase a gentle challenge. "We are patient, we are persistent, and we are proud of what we build ourselves." Velthar found himself grinning back. "You are also stubborn." "That too," she agreed cheerfully. Taiyang waited at the plaza's center, sitting on his favorite bench. He had a small package wrapped in cloth. "Ambassador, come sit with an old man one last time." They sat together and Taiyang unwrapped the package. Inside were old photographs, carefully preserved. "These are from my grandfather's time, the city before the flooding. I wanted you to see where we came from." The photographs showed a beautiful place, clean streets, green parks, modern buildings. So much had been lost. Velthar felt sadness looking at them, but Taiyang's expression was not sad. "You see disaster when you look at these. You see what was lost. But I see what we kept. The people in these pictures, their descendants are still here. The community they built, we still have. The determination they showed, we still carry. Buildings can flood, technology can fail, but the spirit of a people, that endures. He handed another photograph to Velthar. This one was recent, taken after the flood crisis. It showed people working together, repairing Building 12, Yunji wielding her tools, Minho coordinating, Suji organizing, children helping, everyone together. "This is who we are," Taeyang said. "Not victims of disaster, not people who need saving, but people who face hardship and overcome it together. Remember this when you make your report." Yuna and Jinwoo appeared, running up with something clutched in their hands. "Ambassador, wait!" They stopped in front of him, breathing hard from running. Yuna held out a drawing. "We made this for you, so you remember us." The drawing showed New Seoul, but stylized and colorful. Buildings reached toward a sun breaking through clouds. People filled the streets, and in the sky, a small figure that might be Velthar's shuttle. At the bottom, childish writing said, "Thank you for being our friend." Velthar felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you. I will treasure this." "Will you come back?" Jinwoo asked. "We want to show you when the city is better." "If I can, I will return," Velthar promised. "I would like to see what you build." Finally, they reached the landing pad. Velthar's pilot had the shuttle ready. Everything was prepared for departure. But Velthar found himself reluctant to leave. 2 months ago, he could not wait to escape this place. Now, he did not want to go. Minho stood with him at the shuttle entrance. The human administrator had become something unexpected, a friend. "Thank you for your patience with me," Velthar said. "When I arrived, I thought I understood everything. I was wrong about nearly everything." "You were not wrong to care," Minho said. "Your concern came from compassion. That matters. You just needed to understand that different people need different things. We do not need rescue. We need respect. We do not need charity. We need partnership. I will recommend Earth's acceptance to the Galactic Council, and I will recommend it strongly. Not because we need help, I hope. No, because the galaxy needs what you have to teach. Resilience, community, the ability to face hardship without breaking. These are valuable lessons." Minho smiled. "We would be honored to share what we know, and to learn from you as well. That is what joining the galaxy means to us. Exchange, not dependence. Partnership, not charity." They clasped hands, the human custom Velthar had learned. Then he boarded the shuttle. Through the window, he watched the small crowd that had gathered. Hana waving, Suji taking notes on something, Yunji already talking animatedly about her next project, Taeyang sitting peacefully, Yuna and Jinwoo jumping and waving with their whole bodies. The shuttle lifted off, rising through the gray clouds. Velthar watched New Seoul shrink below him, 10 million lights in the darkness, 10 million people refusing to give up. From space, with the water reflecting the city lights, it almost looked beautiful. Back in his quarters, Velthar began his final report. He had filled dozens of data chips with recordings and notes. He had documented everything. Now he needed to synthesize it all into a coherent assessment. He started writing. Initial assessment of human civilization was fundamentally flawed. I approached Earth expecting to evaluate their need for assistance. Instead, I discovered a species that challenges our basic assumptions about civilization and survival. Humans have created functional societies in conditions that should be impossible. New Seoul megacity operates with air quality, radiation levels, and structural stability far below minimum standards. Yet the city not only functions, it shows remarkable social cohesion and resilience. The key is not their technology or resources. The key is their psychological and social adaptation. Humans have developed what I can only call adversity culture. They find purpose in struggle, meaning in hardship, and community in shared difficulty. This allows them to maintain hope and function in conditions that would break most species. They have also developed sophisticated mutual aid systems, complex networks of voluntary cooperation that distribute resources, share labor, and provide social support without monetary compensation. These systems violate basic economic assumptions but prove remarkably effective. Most significantly, humans demonstrate extreme long-term thinking. They think in terms of generations rather than individual lifetimes. Current populations willingly struggle so future generations will have better lives. This generational commitment to gradual improvement has allowed them to slowly transform disaster zones into functioning cities over centuries. Recommendation: approve humanity's application to Galactic Council membership immediately, not because they need our assistance, but because we need their example. Galactic civilization has optimized for comfort and efficiency. We have eliminated struggle and hardship, but we have also lost something vital. We have lost the ability to adapt under pressure. We have lost the resilience that comes from overcoming difficulties. We have lost the deep sense of community that forms when people face hardship together. When I asked humans why they did not leave their harsh city for easier lives, they said, "This is our home. We choose to stay because we built this together, because the struggle gives it meaning, because we are earning our future rather than accepting charity." What happens when our perfect systems fail? When disaster strikes our optimized worlds? Will we have the resilience to adapt? Or have we become too dependent on our comfort? Humans have something precious. They have remembered how to survive, how to adapt, how to face the impossible and simply refuse to quit. They have chosen meaning over comfort, community over ease, dignity over dependence. We should not pity them. We should learn from them. Personal note: I came to Earth expecting to teach humans about civilization. Instead, humans taught me something about being alive. Life is not about having everything you need. It is about facing what you lack and building something meaningful anyway. It is about community, purpose, struggle, growth, hope, and the stubborn human insistence that tomorrow can be better than today if you are willing to work for it. I witnessed a crisis in New Seoul that should have killed dozens. Instead, the community organized, cooperated, and solved the problem with zero casualties. I offered them technology that would eliminate their hardships. They refused it to maintain their independence and agency. I watched children play in dangerous conditions and realized they were learning resilience that will serve them their entire lives. These are not victims. These are survivors. More than that, these are people who have chosen their path deliberately, with eyes open to the costs, because they value freedom and agency more than comfort and safety. The galaxy should welcome humanity, not to save them, but to learn from them, because their most valuable resource is not raw materials or technology. It is their indomitable spirit, their refusal to give up, their ability to look at an impossible situation and say, "We will make it work." And they do. Against all odds, they do. Recommendation status: approved without reservation. Humanity belongs in the Galactic Council, perhaps more than any species currently there. Velthar finished his report and leaned back. He looked at the drawing Yuna and Jinwoo had given him, now mounted on his wall. The colorful city reaching toward the sun, the people working together, the hope captured in children's artwork. He thought about returning someday, seeing the improved air filtration spread across the city, watching the buildings become safer, meeting the next generation that would continue the work, witnessing the slow but steady transformation from disaster to something better. And he believed he would see it. These humans would not give up. They would keep working, generation after generation, improving things little by little. Not because it was easy, but because it was theirs, because they had earned it. 100 years from now, New Seoul would be better. Not perfect by galactic standards, maybe never perfect, but better. So much better. because that was what humans did. They made things better. Velthar smiled. He had come to understand the indomitable, and it had changed him forever. The shuttle accelerated toward the stars, carrying one Quillarian diplomat who would never see hardship the same way again, who would never take his comfortable life for granted again, who would remember always that civilization is not about having everything you need. It is about facing what you lack and building something meaningful anyway. That was the human gift to the galaxy. Not their struggles, not their suffering, but their stubborn, persistent, unreasonable hope that tomorrow would be better, and their willingness to work for that better tomorrow, no matter how long it took. The shuttle passed into faster-than-light travel, but in Velthar's mind, he was still in that gray city by the toxic sea, still watching millions of lights shine in the darkness. Still hearing that phrase that summed up everything, yes, it will take time. So nothing. Time was irrelevant. Difficulty was irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was refusing to quit. And humans never, ever quit.